this is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectators, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
What's going on, spectators, and welcome back to this, the 99th episode of Spectales. Call it luck, call it fate, or simply call it the mathematical result of adding the power of glasses to the power of beard. Spectales is one episode away from 100. I am your just as surprised as you host, Jake, along with my never surprised, all-knowing, all-bearded co-host, Jesus. What is going on, Jesus?
You can be the only one to say you've seen 99 different versions of my beard. So, I mean, that's in itself, Jake. Pat yourself on the back. It's a lot to take in. I mean, I don't know how you can hold that all in your brain, but 99 times. I
thought maybe for episode 100, I haven't pitched this to you yet, but I thought maybe you could shave the beard for episode 100 to kind of celebrate.
You know, the last time I tried to shave this beard, it broke so many razors and clippers. It's not worth it, Jake. It's just not worth it from a what is it called? Carbon footprint standpoint. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. The juice is not worth the squeeze, is what you're saying.
There you go. Yeah.
Now, I am not trying to count my horses before they hatch or to put the cart in front of the chicken here. Episode 99 should not be overlooked. In fact, I've got it on good authority that Spectales episode 99 will go down as one of the greatest episodes in the history of episodes. Now, why is that, you might ask? Well, this week, we are lucky enough to be joined by an Eisner-winning writer whose work includes Birds of Prey, The Cull, Gem and the Holograms, West Coast Avengers, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Captain Marvel, and many, many other titles. She also happens to be the co-creator of Jeff the Land Shark. Of course, I am speaking of the incredible Kelly Thompson. Kelly, welcome to the show. Kelly, are you on mute?
Guys, I really wanted to start this off right, so I did a whole bit where I couldn't unclick the mute button. It went great, didn't it? Thank you. Thank you for that fantastic introduction. I was clicking on the wrong icon. There's too many icons on this screen. I'm old. Anyway, it's great to talk to you both. Thanks for having me. I had to mute it because I almost laughed in the intro.
Oh, well, thanks.
So I was like, I better mute this because I am cool and I know about tools. And now here we are. All right.
Well, that's the thing. We try to get our guests to laugh in the intro. That's one of the things we try to do. So you got around it, but that's okay. As long as we know you were laughing behind that mute button.
Yeah. Fair enough.
No, starting this off with a good sense of humor is definitely the way to go. Sorry to step on you, Jesus.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to welcome her and just, we're so excited. I'm a huge fan, a huge reader of a lot of the work you've done, especially with Marvel, but more recently with the Cull as well, like we had mentioned off air. We're really excited to have you on. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Kelly, so we brought up the Cull. Jesus mentioned it. The Cull had first showed up. My first knowledge of it, Jesus read it and brought it up during a recent pickups on our show. It was a few months ago. It was for at book 1. Jesus had brought it up one week. And it was one of his recommendations. He said, "Hey, this is very unique. This is something different. It's got a great story." And of course, I decided to go and read it. And I've been reading it along, and we're certainly going to talk about it. But in doing more research now, there's a lot of titles where it's like not surprising I remember or I've read or things like that, including Gem and the Holograms. You were on that for a long time. I had known about Jeff the Land Shark and things like that. But in doing a little bit more digging into what you've written over the years, something came up. You worked with a friend of the show, a longtime listener of the show as well. We met this man a couple years ago where he randomly emailed us and said, "Oh yeah, you were talking about Creepy Magazine. I happen to own Creepy Magazine." And we were like, "No, this is a catfishing email. You're trying to get our cell phone, or you're trying to get our numbers, our social security numbers or something." But Dan Braun actually emailed us, and he's been listening, and then he became a good friend. He came on the show once. And small world, you worked with Dan Braun on Creepy number 20. This is crazy. We talk about Creepy we love Creepy Magazine, but we've never, outside of Dan, we've never actually had a Creepy Magazine writer on the show. So this is a milestone.
Well, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's really funny you brought that up because I just wrote a sentence about that short story today for a retrospective thing I was doing, not for anybody but myself, but I was just sort of taking stock of 10 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And because of that, I was sort of writing some things down, and I wrote about that short I did because, that was a thing where, you got to remember that's one of the first published things out there for me.
Yeah.
So it was very early in my career. I was basically trying not to go back to a day job. I was doing consulting work and I was trying to make it as a freelancer. And so my first published work was going to be that was paid. I had done a couple, I participated in the Womanthology. That was a charity book that they did. So I did some stuff like that. But the first paid work I was doing was Heart in a Box, which was Dark Horse. It was a creator-owned book with my collaborator, Meredith McLaren. She and I are doing Black Cloak now. And that, it's you get no money for that. And it takes, Meredith's drawing it, coloring it, lettering it all herself. It takes years to do. So I'm out there trying to hustle. I'm going to my editor, what can I get? He's like, well, I don't know. What can you do? I was like, dude, I can do anything. Give me an assignment. And so he was like, well, what about a creepy short? And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. And I love that little story. I don't think it's super original. I think it's a pretty, especially for anyone who's a horror fan, I think it treads along pretty well-traveled lines. But I will say that the artist who, oh my God, it's been 10 years. I cannot remember his name. He nailed it. We'll have to add an asterisk and pretend I said his name in post. No, I'm just kidding. Ramon, maybe?
Yeah, there was Ramon Box, BAC.
Yes, that's it. He did an incredible job, and I was really blown away by it. Was very graphic and cool and fun. So it was a fun little thing for me trying to pay my rent. But I do feel like I'm not a creepy master, so I feel like it's not as cool a get as it could have been. I was just a day player.
Oh, but still, it's fun and it's like I said, it's just this small world thing because we have just been Creepy Magazine might get brought up. I don't know if it's weekly, but damn near bi-weekly, right, Jesus? It's just whether it's we've speculated on Creepy Magazine. I am currently collecting 1 through 50 of Creepy Magazine, the original. But then we've had Dan on, and it just comes up so often where we're just this is such underrated, good horror writing. It's so much fun.
I think if you're into horror comics at all, I do think they're required reading.
Yeah.
Especially because they've been around like that, not exactly like that, but in format like that for so long. It's incredible.
And they're still very accessible. They are not super pricey. Getting into number 1 and some of the other and the Frazetta covers of the early days can be slightly pricey. But anyway, I could not bring that up. Jesus, just when we came across it, it was just holy shit. This is meant to be.
Yeah, horror is tough. It's a little easier maybe in shorter installments like that, get in and get out with an idea or some very terrifying idea.
Well, that's I guess an interesting little segue. Jake loves these whenever I ask about craft because I'm a craft guy. I don't know why I say that because I don't even know, but I like asking those questions.
Craft beers, craft anything. Jesus will really get
just anything craft. I'll devour it. So genres, right? Horror, it's a hard one to depict on in comics. So I guess what would be your favorite? Is it the superheroes? Is it doing mysteries? Is it doing your own stuff on the Image or the creator owned, or even like the space Star Wars stuff that you like to do that you had some great issues out there?
I mean, I can't deny I like superheroes. I was raised on them. I'm an American kid and an American comics kid, so you're pretty raised on it. I do think I think superheroes can go under the sci-fi banner, and I'm more comfortable under a broader sci-fi banner, if only because it's just more interesting and there's more under there than just superheroes. But I do think superheroes can cross over with that pretty well. But I would also say another genre that's my fave is detective stories, in a lot of different formats. I mean, I like a detective story. I don't know if you remember, years ago, there was like a Western space that Image did. Oh my God, I've forgotten the creator's name, that I really liked, where it just had like all these alien creatures and stuff, and it was on an alien planet, but it was like a local sheriff trying to solve a crime or whatever. And then it was just, it seemed like aliens and stuff, but it also felt like the American West, like the way we think of those kind of Western stories. And so like, I love to mash things up. Black Cloak is sci-fi and detective story, and it's a little bit like there's fantasy stuff in there too, because there's magic and things. So I like to really mash together genres. I do think we were talking about this a little bit before. I think horror is one of the hardest ones to pull off. I think I made a joke about Tinian being, he's so good, and to me he's even better because he's succeeding in what I consider one of the hardest genres to do in comics. So he's really one of the best. So.
And you mentioned that you really liked the Deviant, and we had Mr. Hickson on, and we got to pick his brain about horror and kind of ask
Josh
that
was
as
a lot of
well.
fun to talk to.
Yeah,
Hickson is so good, and they together. I mean, they made me do in the issue 1. I've only read issue 1. I'm sorry, I'm a little behind. But I've only read issue 1, but they got me to gasp out loud. And like it wasn't even like a dark reveal thing. It was more about, it's that panel with him from issue 1 when he's a kid, and he's like a boy. Like, I mean, it was so, the way he got to the revelation, it was just so organic and it felt natural, but he also surprised me by it, which is really hard to do. I was sort of joking the other day that I feel like, even though I'm very not, like anyone who went to art school, I went through like an experimental phase, and then I grew out of that, and I'm like, fuck experimental. I just want a narrative. I want a narrative that makes me feel something, that makes me laugh, that makes me cry, that makes me care, like all of that. I want to be emotionally engaged, and experimental stuff, though worthwhile and often powerful, typically does not engage my emotions in that same way. But I have been joking that my like media choices are becoming a bit chaotic because, when you're a storyteller for a living, you spend all your time trying to break down how something works, why this person made those choices. And so I'm not some genius who can't be surprised by a plot twist, but I'm trying to get there first because I can't really turn my brain off. And if I can't get there before you, I'm so freaking excited. If you can surprise me these days, it's truly, I'm chasing it like heroin or something, because I just, everything is so, we've just seen it all before. And so when I don't know what you're going to do, it's really exciting. But I think even more powerful than that is like what James can do in The Deviant, where I know what you're doing and you still got me. I saw all the setups, and you still, through the power of like beautiful art and the perfect words, got me to really feel something and like be shocked by something. And I just think that's masterclass.
There's no disagreement.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we feel the same way just as plebes and casuals, like it just does so many cool stuff. It reminds me of Mindhunter and things of that nature. But you mentioned something. You mentioned something about like you can't, shut your brain off, and it made me think of behind what is it, Beneath the Trees, Jake?
Yeah, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, which is another end of the year knockout.
I don't know if you've had a chance to, or if that's come across your.
I did read that. I read the first issue. Yeah.
Okay, and that one to me, and again, this is not any slight or anything. It's still great, but that one, the twist is that it's done in the artwork, so it's more like the concept itself overall versus the writing, I guess, or the twists, if you will.
Yeah, I thought that doesn't work as well to me. No shade on the book. I thought it was a good book. I thought it's getting a lot of really interesting attention, and I think that's great. I think anytime people are trying to do something a little different and play with the form, or upset expectations, like having cuddly bears, cartoon characters who are engaging in human behavior, like things like that, I'm always up for that stuff. But I do tend to agree with you, Jesus. I think that to me, it just seems like a normal horror story, and the trick is in we've reskinned it as these cartoon characters, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not super exciting to me. Like if we're talking about a thing that thrills me, like that's cool. Yeah. I'm into it. I think people should do it. Like there's a long, cool tradition of doing things like that in comics that goes very well. And I'm also excited to see people still doing it, because you feel like that's a thing people try for a while and then maybe they sort of back off it or whatever. So it's exciting to see people still trying that kind of thing and playing with the form like that. But yeah, I think when I'm talking about something like the Deviant, I'm talking about something that's a lot deeper, like that's more layered, and that in the case of James, who I know a little bit, but not a lot, we're not BFFs or anything. I think he's talked a lot about how some of that stuff in the Deviant connects to his growing up and ideas that formed him and shaped him. And especially because James is pretty great and a pretty good person. It's nice to see him talking about really dark shit and not being afraid of it and being like, this is how this stuff happens to people. I think it's really fascinating. That said, I've only read issue 1, so maybe everything I said is bullshit because 2 and 3 undid it. I don't know. It's still very good regardless.
I really need to stop and say that Kelly, I appreciate you bringing opinions and backing them up. It's something that there are times within comics, especially with something Beneath the Trees where nobody sees. I mean, that book was getting applauded. You might be the first person I've met that actually have said, yeah, it was all right. Jesus, certainly his opinion is what he said it on the show. We talked about it a lot when we talked about the book heavily in November, I believe it was. Might have been December. But the thing is the opinion is great. You talked earlier, we didn't even get it recorded when you flat out said that you absolutely hated both It Part 1 and Part 2.
Jake's trying to get me killed. Everyone, I just want you to know, just get it out there that there's been a hit put out on me, and that didn't happen. It's I don't want to come hard at it, especially because I haven't read the incredibly dense source material, and knowing what's in some of that, I'm unlikely to, which is not a judgment call. It's just sometimes you just know a thing is not for you. And I know because of some of the things that happened in that book, it is not for me. But I was disappointed. I was excited. I like to get excited about a big horror movie that everyone's excited about, that has tons of my favorite actors in it and very talented young people. And so, yeah, I was into the hype just like everyone else. And my boyfriend and I went to both movies in the theater, and both times I was honestly incredibly disappointed. Both times I felt like they were masterful at tension at creating tension, but then they had almost nothing to back it up every time. And again, I'm a little ignorant here because I don't have the source material locked down in my brain, but my belief is that the source material is incredibly terrifying and dense and complicated. And so it seems like there should have been plenty there other than jump scares, which is what it built to me, that genre. And I'm seeing a lot of this now. It builds up to like sometimes incredible tension. And then instead of really telling a story, the tension release is just a scary thing runs at you and screams at you. And then that scene's over. And maybe you wake up in an abandoned house later, or maybe you run out the front door or whatever it is, but like that's over then. And I'm like, why was the build to this that? Like it's not, I can't say it's not a criticism because it is, but it's just not for me. It's some people, that's their favorite fucking thing, and that's fine. But that's not for me. I prefer something like, what's a horror movie that got it totally right for me? Oh,
you're gonna say did you say Barbarian? Okay.
Barbarian.
I was gonna say you were gonna say an Ari Aster film, but yes, Barbarian.
Well, those are great. Those are excellent. I would say yes to all of those, but like Barbarian to me is incredible because it was terrifying. It knew how to build tension, and it also, in the middle of the movie, threw away everything it had built up. Everything, all the terror I felt. I mean, I was so tense when people were walking into that basement thing. I mean, I almost wanted to like scream in the quiet house because the tension was just so much for me. And then they just threw it away for a smash cut to Justin Long being an LA asshole driving on the freeway in like a Malibu sunshine. And that is the definition of confidence. Because I saw that happen and I laughed and I was laughing and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, but they've ruined this movie. Like, there's no way. Like, I feel fine now. They took 45 minutes to an hour, whatever it is, of all that I felt, and they just threw it away. And you know what? They got it back immediately. As soon as he went in that house and saw, even though he was being all jokey with it, it was, you knew what was going to happen. You knew it was going to happen. It was masterful. So to me, that is more what I'm looking for. But the Ari Aster would be an excellent, there's very little of a scary thing jumping out at you in that. It's about something else. And that's just more my speed.
Yeah.
But I think the reason we started talking about this offline was because we were saying that it's so hard in comics because you don't even have those out. Like, you can't even really do a jump scare.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't exist. You can't pull that out of a hat. And even Barbarian wants a jump scare. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with jump scares. I just don't want the whole thing to be built around that. I don't want that to be what we're landing at.
It's a tool in the toolbox, right? It's a tool in the toolbox.
Yeah. And that brings me. This is the last one, Jake, because I know how you have the craft questions and you're like taking them all. That's enough. That's enough.
I gotta press a button over here, Jesus, that gets us into that first segment. I'm itching.
Hold off.
Yeah, you're good.
Give me a minute. Give me a minute, Jake. Just one. No, but you've mentioned before, and it was really interesting to me because it's true. And I love comics. I've been reading for a very long time. I'm not the biggest reader you've probably seen or met or anything, but I do read a lot. And I love comics because of the medium that it is and what it allows you to do as a reader and how to digest it, right? Like, you can read it slow, you can read it fast, you can go back, you can skip ahead if you want. Like, you can do all kinds of stuff that you can't do with, movies or TV. You can't pause a movie, right? If you're in a theater. Things of that nature, right? And in a novel, you have to do the heavy lifting from the imagination standpoint, things like that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, and you mentioned how, sometimes you have to slow down, read in between the gutters, basically. And is that something, I guess, too, that writing horror comics has to stretch even more? When you're writing and you see that. And you see like people getting upset or I don't know if you do read or don't, whatever, of people, but some people are upset because they don't trust you. Like, okay, Sacrificers. I was telling Jake, I love Sacrificers as Rick Remender, but he put out something ahead of time saying, I'm going to do this my way. It's not going to be like how you expect it to be. It's going to be a slow burn. And I really enjoy the Sacrificers, right? It's in my pull list. I really like it. but I trust him to do it, right? Like, and so the trust sometimes isn't there. So do you think about that when you write? Do you think about like, okay, well, I got to do this because they're gonna say that, or they're not gonna slow down enough?
Yeah, I do think about it, and I wish I didn't. I'm a little more engaged with the readers than I maybe should be, and part of that is because I've found it very helpful sometimes. Like it's an incredibly intense knowledge base. Like, you know, I Rogue is one of my favorite characters, and I know so much about Rogue. There are so many people that know more about Rogue than I do, and this is my job. Like, people make it their whole life. So I'm not cavalier about when someone's like, I can't believe she did this when blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, what's blah, 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 blah? What? I don't know about that. And so you go dig it up and you go, holy shit, they're right. Like, not that I shouldn't have done it, but like, I didn't know this and I would have done it differently if I'd known that. Like, you can't have an encyclopedic knowledge and also do this job. Like, I'm sorry to say, it doesn't pay enough to just write one comic a month and like make sure you know every single thing that's ever happened to that character. So, you know, you're just sort of doing your best. And I think the fan base is very helpful in that way, but there is a, like, I don't know, there's like a point of no return where it's just like, I don't know, you guys either trust me or don't, and I can't argue with you about it on social media anymore. Like, I can't, you know, Tom King said a thing years ago about, I put it on the page, and if I'm not gonna explain it beyond what's on the page, and I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I would like to be that writer. I would like to be like, listen, whether you like it or hate it, I put everything I had to say about it on that page, and so did the other creators with me. And that's the end of it. Either you like it or you don't, or you understood it or you don't. I don't know. But there is a really terrible trend where we went from social media giving you access to people that you never would have had access to just wanting to yell at them all the time because you're upset about things corporations are doing. And like, you know, sometimes you are really mad at that person. You didn't like that specific choice. And if we all chased it down, yes, it was Kelly Thompson who made that choice and did that thing. And so, yeah, you're right to be angry at Kelly Thompson. But most of the stuff that comes at me angrily, I'm barely a factor in it, you know. So it gets hard. It gets hard to do a thing, but then you feel bad about complaining about it because it's a dream job that I am delighted to have and that so many people want, you know. So it's a tricky thing to figure out how much to listen and how much to not. I do think the thing that makes me the maddest, or the most frustrated — mad isn't the right word, but frustrated — is when I feel like I should have earned readers' trust, and I can see that I haven't. Like, they're not caring. They're like, well, they did this wrong this last issue. I was like, well, did I? Or is that part 3 of a 6-part arc? Like, you know, like, can we just wait until it's out first, man? Like, I got real mad because people were yelling at me about the new Birds of Prey cover, and I just didn't have the energy to fight with them about it. It's like all they were yelling at me about was that they wanted Barbara Gordon in the book. So now she's on the cover, but they're mad she's in the suit. And I just, like, you don't know what's inside that comic yet. I just can't have this fight with you about a comic that isn't even out yet. Like, I'm over it. So, I mean, listen, a lot of us have been dialing back our social media for a lot of reasons, including this one. And, you know, it's come for me too. I find I'm engaging much more in the Substack these days. I've got a slow start this year with some deadlines, but the Substack has allowed me to talk about process and like just sort of control the conversation a little more, so that you end up, you know, I don't feel like I'm wasting my time when I'm talking about people. When I'm talking with people who are actually engaged in a non sort of gotcha journalism kind of fan thing that happens, you know? So it's a little tricky though, for sure.
That's I'm sorry, Jake. I know you want that press that button, but you know, she mentioned the journalism part. You know, you came from journalism, right? You were at CBR and you did some reviews and things of that nature. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. I wouldn't call myself a journalist by any stretch. Imagine it. Like, that's a whole job that like is actually important and interesting. But yes, I wrote reviews and I did like op-eds and stuff for sure. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And that, thank you for clarifying. I just, being on the other side of that, right? Like, I don't know, looking back, did that help you to where you're at now? Because you can see that.
It helped me. It definitely helped me learn to write comics. I did go to SCAD. I went to school, for anyone who's listening, and SCAD is great, and you'll have a really great time. It will also cost a lot of money, and there isn't a lot of money in this job, FYI, unless a couple of your lottery tickets come through. So choose wisely. But yeah, you can pretty much figure out how to write comics just by writing reviews of comics, and they don't have to be posted publicly. Take comics and break down why they work, what if they're good or bad, and why they're good or bad. And that's half the job. And then helping to train yourself, writing a lot and training yourself into the good behaviors and not the bad behaviors that you've found is basically all there is to it. I mean, I learned a lot at SCAD, but I learned even more writing reviews and like writing op-eds and thinking critically about comics in that way. I think and it did help as far as like writing reviews. And I mean, people knew my name a little bit from She Has No Head because it got pretty controversial and popular there for a while, but I met more editors and other creators through doing a podcast. And so that was when I really started to make some inroads with some editors and stuff that helped open some doors. But I would say my biggest regret is, I think because of how I approach my reviews, like I just said, where looking, is it good or bad and why, and like really taking a critical approach like that, most of my reviews I feel stand up pretty well. I always feel like I'm a little too harsh. If I look at an old one, I'm like, even if the score feels right, I'm always like, did I have to be so mean? And I think that's just because once you've seen how the sausage is made, once you've seen all the people who are trying really hard to make books every day, you just feel a little more soft-hearted about it. And you just want to give people a little bit of a, okay, all right, this is pretty good. Good job. I mean, it's hard to even make a bad book. I got to be honest with you. As someone who got their hands dirty this year with Creator Owned, where I was like doing everything except for the art and the lettering, it was a lot. And it's hard to make even a mediocre book, even a bad book. So I try to be a little more generous in what people are able to accomplish, because accomplishing anything is difficult. I got to be honest.
Yeah, especially nowadays, right?
Yeah, not getting easier. For some reason, it's not getting easier.
I totally agree. I had a friend who, effectively said this, had the same phrase, right? Like, whatever your project is, whatever you're doing, you are working almost potentially just as hard to make it, whether it ends bad or good. And it's yes. Just as hard to do it, right? The difficulty, the processes, it's all like, you could say that somebody who makes something bad maybe took some shortcuts that the person who made something good, the same thing. But the thing is the process is still the same. And even if it comes out poorly or mediocre or whatever, it was still a heavy lift for somebody.
I think the thing that's terrifying is, while there are a million mistakes or brilliant things you can do for things to go wrong or for things to go right, you could also do everything basically fine and it could just not work out. And that's terrifying. And honestly, you could also, and I say this as I break my arm patting myself on the back, you could do two really great books like Black Cloak and The Cull, and they could be critically well received and they could do well, and I could be on a podcast talking to you about them because people really like them, and that's great. But financially, those did not do well enough for my bottom line for 2023. And that puts their future in jeopardy. That puts my future in jeopardy. So like, even when you do it well, this is a tough fucking business, man. Like I definitely, I didn't think it was going to be easy this year to do it a little differently with the creator owned sort of Marvel DC hybrid that I had for my workload this year. But I did not expect it to be that hard. And I did expect to be more financially successful, but it's a tough market right now. There's so many good books. It's oversaturated, but like, who wants to say, what are you going to cut back? Like, I do think it would be better for everyone, the fans, the readers, the creators, everybody, if we cut books back. But what are you going to cut back? Like what? The incredible new creator owned that someone's trying to launch, or, you're going to cut the legs off from Kickstarter, which gets a lot of things that can't make it in big two, or I don't know what the solution is. I don't think anyone knows, if we had solutions to the problems that plague comics, like I think we would have solved some of those by now.
And it's hard because poll lists are long, right? Like that's, I made the grave mistake of not mentioning Black Cloak in the introduction that I did for you. And the funny thing is like, I was going off the top of the dome as far as the things I knew and read or things like that. And I will be the first to admit, I have not read Black Cloak. And even though the volume 1 dropped last September, right?
Yeah.
And that's something
but that's okay. I mean, that's fine. Like, but that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
There's so
hard
much
to read
stuff.
it all.
Like, you can't be, But it's like, it feels like only like absolute completionists, like people who are like, oh, I buy everything Kelly Thompson writes. Like, it feels like those are the only people who could really keep up with how much you have to write in this industry to like make a good living and like be one of the top people doing this. Like, so it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, totally.
But, we love it. It's again, I feel like I'm complaining so much. I love it. I worked really hard to get this job. I don't want it to go away. It'd be nice if it was a little easier, or a little more lucrative, like, because it would just, I don't like to complain about money all the time, but I just think being more lucrative gives you just different choices about how you're going to continue things. Like, people get sick of miniseries. Well, there's a reason you do a miniseries. It's because that's what you can afford to do with your initial budgeting, and, but then the fate of your book is a question mark because, was that, the audience, it was right on the line for us doing more. Great. Let's roll the dice and see how it goes next time.
It's interesting because you wonder how much, kind of as Jesus loves to say, how the sausage is made, but the idea or behind the curtain, revealing or discussing more of that and publicly talking about more of it. And I completely understand. I don't consider anything you're saying complaining or anything like that, but it is talking about the struggles, the reality of the comic world, which we could get into the politics and the all of those things. And I see Jesus, he's got 100 questions right now, but I'm telling you, Jesus, it's going to be a madhouse here if we don't get to the first segment. We're gonna get an hour in, and Kelly's gonna be like, "Hey, you guys only asked me for an hour. We're 3 hours."
I'll hold off on asking about Rogue One. I'll hold off on asking about how the sausage is made. Fine, Jake. Fine, go ahead.
But I for all of you listeners out there who didn't click the off button when you heard that Kelly hated the first and second It movie, I'm just joking. Listen, I'm not even. The first one to me was just epic popcorn movie, is the way I would describe it. It's popcorn though, but not a lot of staying power as far as like you're not taking it home with you and unpacking it while you're trying to fall asleep. Where Barbarian is definitely that movie. But anyway, I'm just gonna. I may only mention it 1 or 2 more times. Don't worry.
I mean, you've raised some definite questions about your dreams if you're trying to watch Barbarian while you're falling asleep. These are bad choices, Jake. Make different ones.
Sometimes there's only one time and place you can watch a movie like that, when you have a wife and kids.
Your wife and kids don't love Barbarian? What's wrong with them?
No, my 9-year-old might enjoy it, but I can tell you everybody else in the house would not. So I've been teasing it. Everybody knows it. I've got a button over here I need to press to take us into that first segment. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and do it.
Recent pickups.
That's right. 40 minutes into this episode, we are getting to recent pickups. This is the segment where we're going to.
It's a pretty fancy button.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I liked it. I liked what happened.
That one has a lot of polish on it. I keep it really clean. This is the segment where we're going to talk about something we recently read or picked up. Hey, Zeus, you traditionally kick us off, so I'm going to let you do it.
All right, man. I'm going to start talking about. I just have one book today. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, as it can be, I guess. My favorite character, Spider-Man. And there's a very, very hot book right now that, I mean, you can't look anywhere online without somebody talking about it, whether it's, excitement for the future, whether it's excitement because of speculation and difficult to get and all the cool different covers that you can get of it. And different ones cost different amounts, as variants do. And I'm talking about none other than Ultimate Spider-Man #1 by Mr. Hickman. Hickman again. So there goes Hickman again. I mean, I'm saying his name as much as I'm saying creepy. Yeah, the creepy that we talk about. So I'm holding here a #1 with the variant, which this is a connecting variant. You can see an arm right there with #2 and #3. And it's just kind of almost like a reboot or reset of the Ultimate Universe or the Spider-Man universe. Very different. Uncle Ben doesn't die. He gets married. He has kids. I don't think I'm
spoilers
spoiling too much of it. I mean, it's on the cover. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean,
all right,
what are you going to do
that's
here?
Fair point. They put it on the cover. That it can't be a spoiler if it's on the cover.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure I did spoil it. I'm sorry, guys, but by this time it's already been out 3 weeks. Whenever you guys are listening,
yeah,
to it.
only losers like Jake haven't read it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you will read it by the time it comes out, right? So there you go. Even you,
even me.
You already read it.
I actually have heard a lot of positive things. My LCS owner that I go into, I always ask him. I was just like, "Yeah, what's good this week, or what's good, or whatever." If it's been a few weeks, and the first thing he said was, "Ultimate Spider-Man is actually really good." And he's not he hasn't been supporting a lot of Spider-Man stuff because he just hasn't been liking the writing. And this, he just he was like waiting for me at the door to tell me. I don't know why, but that's what it felt like. And he was just like, "This is a good book." I was like, all right, it's a good book.
Hey man, I think he's right on it. I think like Kelly mentioned, like there's some things that Hickman does that I always enjoy in the nuance of it. Like there's a couple of scenes with J. Jonah Jameson and Ben Parker, and then also J. Jonah Jameson and Peter. That's just really cool, really like different to see because you don't see those characters in that light. So just really reinforcing the characters and how different they are in this universe, but also really cool at the same time. So yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend it. I mean, obviously Spider-Man, it's on my pull list. Hickman on my pull list. So definitely pick it up.
Cicchetto should be on everyone's pull list. Isn't that who draws it? Marco Cicchetto?
I thought he had one of the variants, but I'm pretty sure.
I think it's Cicchetto on interiors. I could be wrong, but I haven't read it. I've only seen pages, but it looked like Cicchetto to me, who I love. So
yeah, I mean the artwork on it too, and you know we talk about it. Sorry, I'm opening it up, but we talk about the artwork and how sometimes it just does enough. But this artwork, to me, I mean, let's see, I'm trying to look for not the Ghost Rider, but like Jameson.
Oh yeah,
right. Like
yeah, that's definitely Cicchetto.
Yeah, and then I think which one else did I like? I liked this guy who's that's panel, but it's and then that guy right there, which is pretty dope.
That's a
so
good
really
that's
really
awesome.
cool artwork. Yeah, on the interiors. So yeah, for sure, pick it up if you haven't picked it up. I recommend it. I think it's good. I'm excited about where it's going, how different it is. The cliffhanger, really cool, really different, really interesting. Again, I don't want to spoil it, but I definitely think there's a lot there. And it's the buzz it has, the heat it has right now is well deserved. So pick it up and enjoy the Ultimate Spider-Man #1. And I can't wait to read the rest of it. So.
Well, now you've spoiled that there is a cliffhanger at the end. I mean, it's not often that comics have a cliffhanger.
There's no spoil. There's always a cliffhanger.
All right. Very nice. Very good recent pickup. I've already been informed that it's a great book by damn near everybody I've talked to. So it sounds like I'm going to have to get my hands on a copy of it and give it a read. And which is funny because the only Marvel that I'm currently actively reading right now has been the Hulk. And I kind of jump in and out of some other stuff. Sorry, Kelly. And mostly for the horror. I tend to lean into the horror stuff. That's where my bread is buttered. But yeah, so I will have to go and definitely look into it. Now, Kelly, you are next up on the recent pickups list. What do you got?
I actually have a really great pick, but first I want to say something else.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just want to say that Marco Cicchetto drew our Phasma miniseries, and I was so incredibly lucky because not only is he just great in general, but after we had signed on and said yes, we were told that we couldn't show her face, and my heart immediately sunk, and I was like, what? I was like, how are we going to pull this off? And I think that was the same message when they were like, you can't show her face and we don't want to be in her head. And I was like, how the fuck am I going to do that? But when you've got Marco Cicchetto, you can figure it out. Like that's there, I feel like Jordan and Heather looked at me and they're like, this is why we gave you Marco Cicchetto. I was like, okay, thank God, because I'm going to need him. And he killed it on that thing. Anyway. All right. I have an amazing pick. It's a new series. Oh my God, I didn't get the publisher. It's The Displaced. It's by Ed Brisson, Luca Casalanguida, I think. D. Knief, Hassan Osman El How on lettering. It's debuting February 14th. Is the first issue. It's like I don't know if you want to quantify it. The first, I guess, it's probably like sci-fi mystery series, maybe probably horror also. The first issue has like an incredible hook. I'm a big fan of Ed Brisson. He's a friend of mine, but he does crime really well. He does this kind of story very well. And I thought it was awesome and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm not much into the speculator stuff as far as like knowing, but I do know in this case, in addition to a very cool cover by, I think the interior artist,
is it
Casalanguida.
Yep.
There's also an incredible, I thought really interesting, especially given the subject matter, Chip Zdarsky variant. That's pretty rare, I think. So that's a thing I know.
Well, I Googled it. It looks like it's Boom Studios.
Yes, Boom. You're right.
And yeah, absolutely. Jesus, definitely put this on your Google list or your to look up list. They've got some samples on it. Interestingly enough, one of the page samples, I don't know what it looks like. It's from book number 1, but there's some. There's a shot of like it looks like a guy in a bus and he's going to be pulling out. The thing that is crazy is ever since we talked to Joshua Hickson about the way he does eyes, it like now every time I'm seeing how other artists like capture eyes, and in this there's never any like the eyes there's always a shadowing or there's something, and this is very similar, but in its own way, and the artwork is stunning. It looks awesome. So yeah,
it's really cool.
That looks awesome. And you've already read the first issue, Kelly?
I read the first issue. Yeah, it's great. I really loved it. Like I knew I was interested in it because Ed had been talking about what it was, and I knew some of the ideas in it. But you never know between that. Hey, that's a really good idea, and like, is the first issue a slam dunk? And it is. It's really good. Like my brain is just racing it. Like even though he's talked to me about it, and so I know some of the stuff, I still can't help but be like, well, what is it? What's happening? Why is it like that? So which is always a good sort of. I wouldn't necessarily quantify it as this, but big dumb object stories in sci-fi where there's a portal or a thing or a rock or a whatever that, is the thing that things center around. I don't know that you'd call this exactly that, but it's got some of that energy, which I always love. So.
Nice. Well, I'm certainly putting it on my pull list. It does, from the art and just the brief description, or not brief. They have a lot of information actually, but what I've read briefly on Boom's website, this looks like it's up my alley. And Jesus, this certainly strikes me as something that you would enjoy as well. Our opinions rarely disagree in that regard.
Yeah, I should have said it's basically about a town that disappears and all the people in it, and like, what is that about? Why did it? And like, what's happening as a result of that? It's really interesting.
Well, we tend to try to avoid spoilers on this show, Kelly. So that's
it happens right away. Don't worry.
I'm just joking. No, thank you for sharing that. Kelly, I've got a recent pickup for myself that you probably have heard of it. I don't know. It's also possible that you've even read it. I know Jesus has read it because he's technically brought it up already once on this show. So I went back and revisited the first 4 books of this series, as the 5th one is not quite out yet. It drops early next month in February. I read all the way through once again the Cull, and I gotta admit, it really has me genuinely like upset. Like, I read it again, the 4th issue. I am upset that I don't know the ending. And once again, I will throw out there or admit that I've said this before with some other writers that we've talked to before the series is closed. I don't know how you're going to just wrap this up. I don't know how you're going to finish it in one more issue. And I also am kind of like, I don't know why. I want more of this stuff, right? Like, you could sell me more books, Kelly. I'll buy more books.
We'd love, I mean, amazing pick, Jake. I approve. Certainly. I think the question mark on the Cull is still the question mark on the Cull, because, you know, that painted art that Mattia does, we all know it's absolutely spectacular. It's time consuming.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't put out 5 issues every 2 years. That's not really a way to go. So we're talking about some ideas about how to keep it going. We have some really good ones that I'm excited about, but it's still a little bit of a question mark. It's being figured out sort of as we speak. I will say, for people who either are worried about issue 5 or I don't know. I think a ton happens in issue 5. It's overly long. I think it's 25 or 26 pages because we needed it. A ton happens, both action and emotional stuff, and a couple twists in there. But, you know, I hope at the end of the issue, people go, "Oh my God." And then they go, "No."
Oh, all right.
Because they want more.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're driving for. So I think there are some good twists in there that I hope will leave people wanting more. But, you know, anyone like my mom who isn't listening or reading comics, so hopefully we're safe. You know, she likes things really tied up neatly. She likes to know that everyone, you know, died happily, safely, and quietly in their beds, and were respectfully buried, and had a good funeral. Like, she likes it tied up in a bow. That's not, you know, you're not getting anything tied up here nice and neat. So if that's your expectation, you will be disappointed. If you're looking for a crazy story that's going to leave you wanting more, but that could be the end, then I think, you know, you'll be pretty satisfied. I bumped into this fan, and by bumped in, I mean talked to online, a fan that was talking about the Cull and how much they loved it, but they thought it was over with 4.
Oh,
interesting. And it honestly blew my mind that you could think it could be over at 4 and not be angry with me, even though he was not. He was very nice.
I would have been angry with you. I would have come.
Yeah, I was like, my God. I was like, you thought I'd end it that way? I was like, no. I was like, God, I think it says to be continued on the last page. I hope. But yeah, so it's the last issue is it's a doozy. It's a doozy.
I am looking forward to it. And Jesus, I promise I'm going to let you get in on the question. I wanted to end with, at least in this particular comment, that for me, it's while the characters and I would apologize for spoilers, but honestly, the books have been out for long enough.
Yeah.
It's one of those scenarios where I love the characters and how they have developed, and specifically how they have developed I don't know if you're calling them the mutations or how they have changed since they were in the world, which I also don't know what the name of that world is, but I would say, while I'm invested in the characters and what happens to them, you could just take me back to the world, the different dimensions,
space.
the liminal space where they went. You could take me back there with any other new characters, and I think it's what happened to them in there. I'm like, no, go back in. Let's see what else happens. I want to know what's going on in that space. And I'd be, I think, just equally as invested. And that's cool, right? That's world building. That is that world building that takes you from a mini series into a full on series, that takes you into the split offs, and I think that's cool. I think that you've created something long lasting in that.
Thank you. That's certainly the goal. And the liminal space and all the possibilities of what we built here are certainly what's on the table as we're talking about where we go from here. But you're right. No matter how 5 ends for these characters and this world, the way you've established it can be infinite things. So, which is sort of the beauty of it.
I agree. And for me, Jake, I've been telling him to get onto it, and I've actually been talking about it for a couple months now, and I really enjoyed it. I like like at the end of each issue, I'm like, man, I want to read more. I think I mentioned it on there, and I think that I mentioned it in the same way. If you go back to one of our episodes because I think I did it twice on recent pickups, and it was like, there's just enough there that's very interesting that I'm like, I have to read the next issue. I have to see where these characters go, what's in that space, what happens after. And just going back to what you said about the fan saying he thought it was an after 4. I was like, there's no way it can be done after 4. I would have been upset about it.
Me too. I was upset he thought it was over. I'm like, wait, you're not paying enough attention. Like, I appreciate that you like it, but you should be angry or reading more closely.
For sure. But I did, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier about the financial success of this series, right? Like, is that, and we've had conversations about this, a lot, and I'm gonna probably say something that I'm sure you're aware of, maybe you're not. It's not gonna be any fun, but there's LCSs here local to me, and I'm in Houston, which is a pretty big market, that will not order books unless they're on a pull list, like especially independent books, and which sucks, right? Because part of it is like reading it, and like, I'll give you an example. Like number 2, it wasn't at my local LCSs. I had to go look for it, and it's like, put on your pull list. Well, my pull list is so long, I have to figure out which ones I can put on there, which ones I can, and then which ones I can find. And at the same time, I'm talking about like for FOC, right? Because I might get laid into a book or something, or somebody like right now we're good with the displaced because it still hasn't come out yet. But if it's behind, then I have to go look for it.
Yeah.
And they don't have it. So I only ended up with the variant cover of number 2. So I'm still looking for the cover A because I wanted to read it. So with the state of LCSs and how they are and how, like you said, there's so much stuff, it's saturated and things of that nature. I guess when you put in, again, you're saying this is one of your first ones putting out this and the Black Cloak book. Is there like and you don't have to be specific on it, but like, is there benchmarks that you're thinking about, or maybe that Image puts out or tells you about, or is just something or internal?
I think there's a lot of crosstalk among creators about how well this book did or this book didn't do, or like how tough the market was this year. It used to be that I would hear these stories of, come to the new world, the land of plenty. Like, you can make more on your royalties for a good Image book than you'll make for a whole run of a miniseries you do at Marvel. So like, come over here. And that's just not the lay of the ground, right? That's not the reality right now, whether it's because of COVID or because of oversaturation or any number of things. I mean, all the printing costs and shipping costs went up over as a result of COVID. Everyone's moved distributors, like we took a huge hit on what I got paid and what Maddie got paid on our royalties for, I think it was our issue 2, because it like happened to come at a time when they switched distributors. So, it's like a lot of little things that you're not in control of and that you maybe don't even know about. It's, the sausage being made is messy and there's a lot of factors. I think for the Cull and for Black Cloak, I was given a great gift in that those are basically funded by the Substack. I was given one of those grants where they like pre-fund. And so I could not only build these books, I could pay people what they deserve to get paid. I could pay to put variant covers on. I could do all this stuff. But the hope when you're doing that is that you're going to meet some basic benchmarks. And between the time I started doing these books and they came out, I mean, the market was really soft for creator-owned Image series. So, we did okay. We were good sellers, like among our group each month, we were good, but not enough to be like, oh, let's bank that money and fund another 5 issues. Not like that. Yeah. Not like, hey, take this and buy a new car with your royalties. And then maybe we've got some room to do some more or whatever, so I think it's, it's a lot of different things. I think the state of things from one year to another can really change. I mean, when Kelly Thompson was first urging me to do some creator own, like she was really killing it on Image, like Pretty Deadly and Bitch Planet and stuff like that. Like they were having real heyday, but that's not in evidence now to me. You can still get breakouts. Like I think Charles Soule's 8 Billion Genies certainly broke out. And then also, you get option talk right away with something like that because it's a big sort of high concept idea, very, very appealing, So I think it's a lot of things. I mean, the Cull got completely screwed. Like to me, the Cull is probably the most optionable thing I've ever done. And, we hit right in the middle of the writer's strike was finally dying out, but then still the actor's strike was going on, which put everything on a hold. And then everything that wasn't on hold has been slowed down. So, there's like a glut of material sort of sitting in there. So, you never know. It's luck. A lot of it is luck. That's why in any business like this, they tell you to like really hone your craft and be ready. And it's because when that opening opens up, you got to be ready to shove your foot through or your script or whatever it is, and there's a lot of hurry up and wait in this business. And, in an ideal world as the writer, they're never waiting on you because yes, you have to create the thing from scratch. You have to make something out of nothing. But if you can do that, your job is less time consuming than almost everyone else's, So, being on time, which is a hilarious thing to me to say, because I can't even write an email without apologizing these days first because something is late or not what we discussed. So, but the business is tough. They call it, I didn't really understand it when I first got to Marvel. Someone said, I think it was probably Nick Spencer. I think it was because he was only writing Amazing Spider-Man at the time. And I may not have realized it was a twice a month book at the time that I asked him this, but I was like, are you really only doing Spider-Man? And he looked at me and he goes, don't worry, the churn will get you too. And I was like, what? And he was like, the churn. And, it's just a term they use that's like where you do too many books and they ask too much of you and it burns you out and burns you up. And yep, the churn got me too. It gets everyone.
The churn.
That. It's funny because Philip Kennedy Johnson basically described that without calling it the churn when he had to give up Alien.
Yeah, he did. That's great. Yeah. All right. Well, on this, so Kelly, just to brief description. For recent pickups, we always give out tater tots, 1 through 5. For basically 5 being, the top, 1 obviously not as great. But all tots are good. All tater tots are good. Let's go through Jesus. I'm gonna say yes, Ultimate Spider-Man. Hey, highly recommended book. Totally respectable. But in terms of overall, like if I look at the scope of the type of things you've brought in the past, Jesus, I gotta say this is probably like a 2.5 tots week for you.
Wow.
Two and a half. Hey, you're halfway to 5, but so it's
when we get Hickman on, Jake, just you're gonna eat those words.
Hey, understood. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Kelly, huge fan of your recent pickup. Slightly unfair that you have the unfair advantage of getting to read it early, and we do not. And the readers, but it is helpful to us and our readers, the recommendation. So because it's slightly unfair, you got to read it before us, but that you did still bring a very solid recommendation. I'm going with a really respectable 3.5 tots here. 3.5.
I just want to say there are very few perks in this business. I have to use the very few that I get.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm not holding it against you. I'm simply saying that it's one slight. If there's a knock there, it's that.
So you are holding it against me.
No, and listen, I don't.
Of a knock.
I personally don't get to decide how the tots are distributed. I'm just reading off of my list here that I was handed.
Oh, I see now. I see a rejiggering of the rules. Some
glad.
goalposts moving, perhaps.
Yeah,
Jake.
I'm glad somebody else sees it now too, Kelly.
Everybody seems to think I'm making these decisions here, but it is being made by a very independent third party. But that does bring me to that does bring me. Yeah. It brings me to the final tally here. Mine, the Cull.
Do the right thing.
Super very popular series, and also bringing up a book that was written by one of the guests on the show. It is impossible to say anything, negative about this particular book. And so it's a solid 4.5 tots is what it comes in as. So
I've changed my mind. I approve of the tot system now.
Oh no, he got to you too. Dang it.
So
it happens every time.
I'm not above being bribed, especially if it's in the form of tater tot.
It is with a humble heart that I say that I have, for the, I believe, 99th, 98th maybe time, I have won the recent pickup tots competition. So now,
wow, what a streak, Jake! What a streak!
These are rough conditions, Jesus. But now that I know my score on the tots, I can't take up your cause. I'm sorry.
You can't really
immediate.
You can't argue the system. Yeah, the system is flawless. It's very. But coming to the end of the first segment, really, it's exciting because that does bring us to the next segment.
Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale.
That's right, the Grail Tale segment. And this is one that everybody loves this segment. But the best part about this segment is that we get to learn a little bit more about our guest, and Jesus and I get to sit back, have a drink, Kelly, we're going to let you take it from here. So, with that said, Kelly, the mic is yours.
I'll do my best. As I said before, I don't really have the coin for this kind of thing. And I don't like setting my sights on much. Like, I just like to have a house and a car would be nice. But I think really high on the list would be anything, and especially the cover, perhaps, from Jim Lee, Uncanny X-Men 269.
Oh,
which is like a very formative comic for me.
Yeah.
But I'll never see those pages. Like, they've got to be a fortune. It's Jim Lee at like what I would describe as, no offense, Jim Lee, like peak Jim Lee superhero art at that time, where it was like right before he became so famous on the X-Men, and like his style, I think, like tightened up a little bit. And I'm sure for most people, they really preferred that because it was even slicker and sharper. But like for me, there's like a little bit of looseness in that Uncanny X-Men 269. That's just my absolute favorite Jim Lee stuff. But it's also full of like Rogue in a Savage Land torn up bikini. So those pages went long time ago.
Oh yeah.
I have no hope of really getting those. What else would be really top of the wish list? I mean, maybe some Love and Rockets, Jaime Hernandez stuff.
Now, Kelly, is there anything like that you own currently or personally that is sort of like it, God forbid, but let's say, natural disasters happening or something's happening where you're running out of the house, running out of the home, and you got to you get to take one collectible with you before everything caves in or whatever it might be. And your cat's everybody's safe, right? Everybody's safe, but you get to take
everybody's safe and I already took the Eisner.
Yeah.
I do like
well, you got to wave that in. Yeah, that's definitely good.
I love it. It makes me very happy. It makes me feel like I haven't been wasting my life. I know it's just stupid.
No, it's not stupid at all. But
it helps sometimes when your car is 15 years old. You're like, see?
You just look at that. Yeah. Just mounted on the hood.
I don't know if the car can take it at this point. Yeah. All right. So that's really hard because most of the stuff that I have is really great stuff that artists have given me from our runs, as opposed to stuff that I've gone out. And so it's hard to single that out as stuff. I've bought a few things, but they're almost never, I really haven't had the scratch for originals. So sometimes I'll get prints of things that I really like. I have some gorgeous prints from Becky Cloonan from her Providence stories that she did, her creator-owned stuff. It's really beautiful. Ben Caldwell, I've bought, and he's given me some stuff from our A-Force run and from his sketchbook. I'm a big fan. Jan Balduza gave me some stuff from Mr. and Mrs. X. Pere Perez gave me some stuff from Rogue and Gambit. So yeah, I mean, I'd go for that. I've got framing is so expensive that I haven't really framed much of it, but so I guess that'll make it easy to grab in the fire because it's like all in a similar portfolio,
Just grab that and go.
Well, yeah, and even Sergio gave me some stuff from Captain Marvel with Binary and stuff. So
that's
like
cool.
All that stuff is not only beautiful and cool, but like has an emotional component to me that helps.
100%.
So yeah, that's the kind of stuff.
That absolutely counts as grails, and obviously the personal connection to it makes a lot of sense. Why you would want to grab those, and Jesus and I. Each, I mean, we've talked in the past. It's like I have a comic that is a grail of mine. It's one of my most valued comic possessions, but it's not original art. It's just an old famous funnies with one of my favorite Frazetta covers of all time, and it's like that book. Just
that's cool.
Yeah, and it took me a while to get it because again they're not necessarily cheap, and even if it's the worst condition copy of that book that I've ever seen and the covers detached and things like that, that copy is mine, right? That's mine. And so I totally understand, but I'm jealous that you have that original artwork to
I don't have a lot of super important or cool issues, but I do have a run of stuff that is signed by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, like first appearance of Gambit and things like that. I went to one con when I was 17 years old or something, and I got a bunch of stuff signed.
That's amazing.
And Chris Claremont was famously in my family, famously extremely rude to my brother and I, even though we very dutifully brought a the Sovereign, that thing he made after he left X-Men that was not good, but that he desperately wanted to be good. I get it. You want something to be good when you leave X-Men, but it was not good. And we brought it for him to sign anyway because we respected and loved him, and we brought it along with our other X-Men comics. And honestly, he was a complete dick.
Oh my God.
A total dick. I was like a little doe-eyed 17-year-old full of hope and life, and here was this icon, and he was And listen, I'm sure it had nothing to do with anything. I'm sure he had a bad day. Some PA didn't restock the green room. There were lines at the back. I don't know. I'm sure it had nothing to do with us, but boy, it was a great reminder, right? When you have something like that happen, you're like, you really, even if you're just really weird, niche famous, like comic book writers are, you really gotta try your best to have good interactions with people, because they're maybe never going to see you again. And that's all they're going to take away. So it's important.
Lasting impression.
It's important. It was a good experience to remind me of that.
Never meet your heroes. That's the phrase.
No. Yeah, never meet you. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. So what I learned is that you just be dicks to people all the time. No, I'm just kidding. I forgive you, Chris Claremont. I'm sorry I told this story. I couldn't help myself.
I'm glad you apologized, because he listens a lot. He's a weekly listener of the show.
Anyway, so I have a couple really cool X-Men type things that are signed by Jim and Chris Claremont. I think probably the Gambit one, the first appearance of Gambit, that's probably the one that would be the most expensive if you tried to sell it. But I don't know. I haven't really looked.
Yeah, you could.
I'm not getting rid of it.
Get some, that's kind of what makes it a Grail as well. But you can make some scratch off that. You might. I don't know if you're not buying a car with it. Well, I mean, maybe a small car.
I mean, wait. If I can buy a car with it, I changed my mind. I'll get rid of it. Someone get in touch. I need to buy a car.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, those original pieces of art that you have is also to me, it's really cool. I think that's cool that they give you that, or you're able to get that. I was going to ask how that works sometimes.
Sometimes you buy it. Sometimes you offer to buy it. Sometimes when you offer to buy it, they say they'll just give it to you. And if you're me, you go, oh no, please don't do that. But also you're really hoping it will work out to at least get a discount because you don't have enough money. I think everything is different. It depends on your relationship with the artist. It depends on the book. The biggest factor, unfortunately, these days is a lot of people just don't have it because they do it digitally. I think that was with Leo on Birds of Prey. I was like, my God, I've never wished more that you did pencils and ink so that I could buy some of these because I'm just so in love with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about the new stuff, and also the bad thing that we don't get the original artwork of it. Yeah. So one thing with the artwork too, that just one, I looked up a page of that X-Men 269 interior page of that cover of that book, sold in 2020 for $9,500. And it's an interior, but it does have Rogue on it. So I think it's pretty cool. So just, and those Jim Lee and Scott Williams, it's crazy. It's going for crazy amounts. But then the other thing about that is, we were fortunate enough to have Eric Larson on, about, what is it now, 2 years ago, Jake?
Going on, yeah.
And going on 2 years. And he mentioned that he trades some of his original artwork at sometimes with Robert Kirkman for Jack Kirby original artwork. So, and then also I think Nick Pitaro told us that he trades artwork for artwork.
Yep.
So there might be some trades possible there to get you to your Rogue and your Jim Lee. And I agree with you. 90s X-Men is peak to me. Yeah. Jim Lee as well. So. I mean, that's some possibility there to be able to get a hold of some of these original artworks from peak Jim Lee era. It does happen. So now I'm going to be on the lookout for some of these too. Hopefully I can, I don't know, trade my way up from a paperclip into a Jim Lee. Jim Lee.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Kelly, thank you very much for sharing the Grail Tales and just talking through some of those the books that kind of, I guess, maybe for lack of better verbiage, but the kind of the books and the things that define you. right? Like in the Claremont story, it's just the story itself of you meeting Claremont is kind of a grail of sorts, right? It's not the most. It's so memorable. It may not be the most positive thing, but you can't deny that that's still fun to talk about, right? Like.
It's totally fun to talk about. I don't know that I've ever talked about it publicly before. Like I've shared it privately, like joking with other, and like we had a Marvel Slack for a while. It's not called the Marvel Slack anymore because it's, there's a lot of different writers, not just Marvel people in it, but, I'm sure I've like talked about it and joked in there or whatever, but it is valuable to me. It's valuable to me as a multi-level experience, but the most thing I took away from it was that, you might only get one shot.
Yeah. Oh,
so
I think that's great.
Make it count. And
it's a fun lesson to, to have learned it while meeting Claremont. And I can't say that I've met, I haven't met a lot of like my heroes, I guess, in some ways. Like we've been incredibly lucky to have spoken to some amazing creators and people that are like Mark Waid or even modern writers that I admire so much, like W. Maxwell Prince. But we've never had a negative experience. I guess that's they're not coming on if they don't want to talk to us, kind of thing. So that's
you'd think so, but I did have one negative experience when I was podcasting. I don't know that he meant it to be negative. But definitely the worst interview / least friendly interview we ever did on the Three Chicks Review Comics podcast was Nathan Edmondson. He was like in his car.
Oh.
And he was, I don't know, he was very prickly. I don't know. I sometimes wondered if like, did he not realize what he said yes to? And then when because we weren't like a gotcha podcast or anything, but we were a bunch of women talking a lot about women in comics and women's roles in comics and stuff. So like, I don't know, his behavior was strange, but like, maybe it was just a bad connection and whatever, you don't know. As an interviewer, you're like, I feel like we fucked that interview up because he didn't seem to love it, whatever. But like, it wasn't like people didn't like it, they
I think
maybe they're just like, he's just like that, so it was a normal interview. I don't know.
I think Jesus and I walk into every conversation that way, where it's just like, this may not always go the way that we thought, but that's just that. And we've got a certain sense of humor. I know that there's been a couple of times I've opened the show and I'll say something stupid about something squishy in my shoe or just ridiculous stuff. And you like, sometimes I like to do it just to see the person's face. Like, okay, are they interested in this level of comedy or are they not on board?
Yeah, I guess it's a risk anytime because you don't know this person when you ask them to come on. But I guess I just felt most of the time, they want to come in good faith because they want to have a good conversation, and why come into it in a negative way, right? And like also they're there to promote themselves as much as for you to create new content for your cast that promotes you. So everyone's there with the same thing in mind, but I don't know. It's just not everyone is super fun, or not everyone likes me a lot. Maybe it's that, it's like, it's a salted taste thing. And there is a lot to the chemistry of that, and I feel like you can often know like right away on a podcast, like, oh, well, this is going to be really fun and probably we're going to go too long and, whatever. And then there's the one where you're like, yeah, I hope this is done in 30 minutes.
Well, yeah.
But you still give it your all, man.
Yeah.
Again, it's your only chance for some people. Like, what if someone listened to that Nathan Edmondson interview and thought he was a jerk and then was like, well, I'm not going to read those books. Like, you turn those people away, but you can only be yourself. So,
And we appreciate you coming on. That's exactly. And there are just those situations where you walk into a random interview and then you find out the person you're interviewing doesn't like the part 1 and part 2. And then you find out early, and you just have to work through those kind of differences. throughout the show, and you just got to get through it.
Masterpieces of it, number 1 and number 2.
Oh my God.
I told you I'd only mention it 1 or 2 more times. So now at most you have 1 more mention. Don't worry about it. Jokes works in threes though. So
that is true. That is true. I guess I'm doomed.
No, actually, I think that is the 3rd mention of it. So we might be good. All right. Well, but thank you very much for sharing it. It really is incredibly appreciated. We have a lot of fun when we do the Grail Tales, and that's the best part of it, is just really to learn a little bit more about an individual, and as a creator. Right. I think it shows a lot about you. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
So from here, Kelly, we've got 1 more segment left. I've got 1 more button left to press. So there is nothing for it. I just have to do it.
Speculation.
The speculation segment. It's a little bit, the music is a little creepy. Things are a little creepy when we do that on purpose because
I like all your buttons.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very good.
Well, we took some time to craft them and how we wanted them. And we made the speculation one a little bit on the creepy side because to some people, speculation is scary. To some people, it's voodoo. It's something they don't want to talk about. But we have everybody who comes on the show give us a comic book speculation where we're going to talk about a book that for some people it's just, hey, this is a really underrated book that more people should pay attention to. But for some it's like, hey, this very specific issue is one that we think you should be paying attention to, as it has legs that could keep walking here, and that value might go up where you can eventually sell the book to buy a car. Right. And so those are the conversations. Hey, Zeus, once again, you traditionally kick us off. So I am going to let you take the reins.
All right. I have 2. They're based on the same thing. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about them because they basically hit a lot of our check marks, our boxes. Right. So a first appearance in a comic. Right. That's 1. And then low number of copies ordered.
Okay.
So now you have a 2, right? So I'm talking about none other than the first appearance of Jeff the Land Shark, the pet of Gwenpool. Nice. West Coast Avengers number 7 from 2019, which is a really cool cover on it as well. And it's also the return of Marvel Boy. Copies ordered by retailers, 14,439.
Wow.
So under 15K out there. So for a new,
pretty
scarce.
Terrible if you're trying to do an ongoing. Pretty great if you want a high dollar issue.
Yes. Yeah, so it's bittersweet, I guess, or I don't know what the term is, but the definite term is scarce. Yes, I am saying it's scarce.
Scarce.
Not a lot of out there.
We haven't had a scarce mention in a while. That's a.
Yes, we have not. That's why I wanted to bring this up. So yes. And then the second one also has to do with Jeff the Land Shark. Superior Spider-Man number 7 is the first cover appearance of Jeff the Land Shark. Now that one, going back real quick to West Coast Avengers. On the high side, you're looking at about a $35, $40 book raw in near mint condition. This one, the Superior Spider-Man number 7, which is the first cover appearance. I mean, it's a $3 book. You can probably find it in the back bins. But it's the first cover appearance. So those are the 2 books that you want for Jeff the Land Shark. And I definitely think Jeff the Land Shark has legs. And he does have legs. So.
All right. Hey, I like it. I think this is great. I think that's good. Hey, Zeus, I got to tell you, man, had you brought this level of quality to your recent pickups, I think you might have got more tots.
You gotta get out, Jesus. This is a setup.
I mean, 99 times he's tried to break me, but I will not break him.
Well, it was worth a shot anyway. Kelly, you are up next on the, but Jesus, great job. I really like it. And I can also absolutely recommend it to everybody else as well. Kelly, in this case, you're up next. What do you have for us?
So I'm not very good at this, but I'm going to try my best.
Sure.
So Birds of Prey, I guess this is straight from the horse's mouth. So issue 6 that comes out next month.
Yep.
Could be a key issue.
Ooh.
Because of a character reveal, debut kind of a vibe thing.
Yeah.
But I also think issue 3 is the first appearance on screen on panel of Megara, that character, and that character will be reappearing. So I don't know how big she'll become. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know, but could be. And then this is for the Cull. I talked a little bit about this. So for both Black Cloak and the Cull, if they ever become more popular or get optioned or something, they both have something called Founders variants that are numbered and signed by either me or the artist. There's only 300 of them.
Oh.
So very low on that. Look at it, Sus.
Like,
It's suddenly interested. It's like, I think I'm like 300. God, is it?
Hold on. No, I want to know what the founder is, because I've been on this since the beginning. I consider myself a founder. You used the word, I did it.
So it's people who backed the Substack at the founding level. They got a lot of print stuff, including these rare copies. But then we had to get a certain amount because we needed to be able to give them these copies and then also have some to sell in our shops or whatever. So we ended up doing 300 for Black Cloak #1 and 300 for the Cull #1. So they're like clean dress, no numbering on the front. The Cull is by Madia. The founders for Black Cloak is by Meredith, so they're by the creators. And yeah, they're just incredibly rare because there's only 300 of them, and they're signed by either me or the artist, and they're numbered. So like you could get on the Cull, it's numbers 1 through 100 are signed and numbered by me, and then you can get Madia. He has numbers 101 through 200 like that, and then I did 201 through 300 or whatever. So it's broken up like that, and they're incredibly rare. If the Cull ever gets optioned, like that will be the rarest Cull book there ever is. Also on that same tip, this was sort of an accident. We didn't mean this to happen, but it's created a rarity because of the connecting cover factor. So the Cull has B covers for issues 2 through 5. It has B covers that are Tula Late connecting variants. And the first issue also has a connecting variant, but it was an incentive cover. And because of that, and it was a high incentive, so it was ordered much less. So while I feel like 2 through 4 of the Tula Late covers are pretty present out there in the market, 1 is pretty rare. And if you wanted to connect them all, 1 is what you got to find, is the problem child. So that's another little sort of thing that I don't think the Cull issues are super valuable now, but down the line it could be if it gets optioned or something. And I think the Tula one is a particular, it's also just a beautiful cover. So, no harm there.
Totally agree.
All right. That's the best.
No, that's
yeah,
good.
That's the Tula one. Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
No, I mean, between Birds of Prey and those and specifically the select covers and copies of the Cull, I think those are both very qualified. It's to me, I always enjoy when people come on and they say, "Oh, I don't know anything about this," and then bam, they drop down just really good information and stuff, as if they're professionals, which you are.
Well, I guess I meant that my information wasn't bad, but it's just I don't have, because I'm not that into the speculator market. I don't have a lot of information about books that aren't mine. But for mine, yeah, I can give you a little bit of insight, like that. That's about it.
Hey, that's how you play the game. That's how you. Yeah, it's almost like insider trading when it comes from somebody who's writing it, right? Like there's
writing it.
Yeah.
If there was any significant money in it, I'm sure you'd be right. But, but for my picks, I don't think there's significance there.
You never know, and I think that I think there's always, when it comes to options and things like that, there's certainly no guarantees. I mean, there's plenty of books that become optioned but don't ever come to fruition.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of cases, it's always like sad. Like, I'm sad that Ice Cream Man has yet to be adapted.
Yeah.
Even though I know it was optioned, right? That kind of thing.
There's also just that really long timeline.
Very true.
You know, like Scott Snyder's Witches got adapted like right away when it came out, and like we're still waiting on, but like it's still in development. I think it's still a thing that's happening. But you know, especially when you get Hollywood shut down for multiple years for strikes and pandemics and things, it really stretches out the tail on that a lot more. So
very, very true. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for sharing that. Good work. Great job. I'm almost saddened to follow it in this case because I don't have a 4.5 tots level suggestion in this particular case. I'm grateful that we're not doing tots for this segment. I
was gonna say
the tot god.
I'm on the edge of my seat because I thought we were doing tots, and I thought you just given Jesus this hope.
Well, that's
this little face.
I
think he thought he was getting 4.5 tots. He was going to win.
The gods of tots don't give tots for the speculation segment. They never have, right? We've only ever
what a heartbreaker.
Yeah, I never get a note passed to me with tot ratings for anything but the recent pickups. It always comes from my left. Your right, my left is where the note comes from. Anyway, so my speculation, it's interesting. We've had a lot of snow days here. I'm in Nebraska. We've had a lot of snow. I think that the whole nation has had a lot of snow days. It seems like where I can't even get out of my driveway, let alone drive to work or anything like that. So I work from home. And I'm doing quotations, air quotes. So I work from home, but I've recently, I have a 15-year-old son. This is not necessarily news to some of the listeners, but one of the things that my son loves video games, as a lot of 15-year-olds do. And something funny happened over the last sort of week and a half is he was kind of getting into some of my old video games, and he wanted to play them with me. And he was like, "What's BioShock? What's that? Let's play that." He's like, "Oh, I remember you playing Fallout 4 a lot. Can we go back and replay that?" And I'm like, "Well, listen, Fallout 4 is like 100 hours worth of time. Like, you want to play it? Like, I'll give you a point and we can talk about it." But him and I got into actually playing BioShock 2. But the reason I bring these up, as far as I know, I have been doing digging and digging and digging. There are currently no comic adaptations of these books or these stories. So Fallout or BioShock. Now, both are optioned. Both are in some level of production. Fallout is actually a show that's coming out on Amazon this spring. I believe it's supposed to drop in April. I think there's a teaser trailer for it out now. BioShock, the trailer, it does exactly what it's supposed to. It teases you. You watch it and you're just like, wait, I need more. But BioShock, on the other hand, I keep hearing that it is in production or they're working on it. It's in some form of development, which I got to say, before BioShock, my favorite first-person shooter, favorite game really had been Halo. Because Halo, I felt like changed the game in so many ways. But the moment I played, literally changed the game. But the moment I played the first BioShock game, I was just engulfed in the story. Right, I had never played a game that really made me immediately say, if this was a movie, I would pay $100 to buy a ticket. Like, if this were a TV show, I would watch it. Like, anything. Like, I just wanted more of the world. The world building in BioShock was just amazing. So I go all this way. We're talking speculation. There have been the art of BioShock and the art of Fallout. These have both been published by Dark Horse. Surprisingly, Dark Horse did both of them, even though they are not. BioShock and Fallout are produced by different companies, I believe, or created by different companies. I'm not entirely certain. I know BioShock is like Bethesda, I believe.
Bethesda.
Thanks, Jesus. But in general, I don't know if Dark Horse just really got into this like very popular video games. We're going to do like the art of very popular video games. So these, I would not say they count as first, comic or graphic novel or anything like that, but it is a published story. It's a published art of these storylines, and with especially Fallout, where this is that the show is coming. If there is any amount of success of this show, like spinoffs, I am still amazed that neither of these have a comic adaptation or spinoff or something. So I would say these two Dark Horse books kind of already they're like, oh, I could use these on my coffee table. Both of these, right? I love that. They're two of my favorite video games of all time. And I know that I'm not alone in this. So, from a speculation standpoint, I just know these are the type of books that maybe go out of print and they just don't bring them back. These are the type of books that people might say, in a few years, they're like, well, they don't print those anymore, right? It's like omnibuses, right? Once they print them once, and then they go, they're in a flash or something, and then you end up paying $150 for that damn book on eBay because it didn't get published ever again. And I don't know that that's going to happen. I do know that the recent development of seeing Fallout as a show immediately made my brain say, I should be Googling this. Is it out there? And not just from a speculation standpoint, but just from a collector and visual lover of these stories. I feel like I want to own those books, and I don't think I'm going to be alone. And I don't think Dark Horse printed a ton. I doubt they printed a ton of these things, probably not 15,000. So they might be pretty scarce. Right. So
for sure.
So anyway, that's what I got.
Well, the creator of BioShock is Ken Levine, and he is a comic book guy. He's one of us.
So I'm a comic book guy.
One of us.
That bodes well.
Yeah, but so even more shocking that we haven't seen an adaptation of any kind. So, but
yeah, I think there's some. If you guys want to Google it, there's some stuff out there as to why he doesn't want to do that. I don't think it's like super common knowledge or anything like that, but I think there's some specific reasons why he doesn't want it adapted, which is fine, I guess. But it would be really cool to get more into that world because that's such a cool and unique world, right?
Very much so. So that's what I got. It's sort of quasi speculation, but also just kind of keep your what is it? Keep your eye to the grindstone. You got to put your eyes somewhere to watch out for said books as they might be, or if some adaptation does sneak out, right? You gotta watch out for it. Anyway,
some of those have hit really huge. Those when they bring those games over, or where they combine Marvel characters with the game or whatever. Like some of those have done really well. I often have a lot of trouble with those. If it's already a show that I love, I have trouble with the comics sometimes. And I think it's just because of the visual, it's like that actor is now that character for me. And the move over can be difficult. But reading it pre-casting, that might work for me. Like if I was into a book and then later found the show, that doing it that direction would probably work okay for me. I've been hesitant to pick up The Expanse, even though I really love the show, and that's a comic that I'm sure is very good. I don't know. I'll probably never know because it's just too hard for me. I need those actors. Like if we can somehow trap them inside the comic pages and make them act it out, maybe I would accept it. But short of that, I can't get it. I can't get there.
I completely understand. I know that can be difficult for a lot of people, and in some ways it was. I still have a problem where it's like I read the Game of Thrones books or and the thing is I had already committed to a look for those characters in my head that when they don't translate, then you still there. You know what, really, Kelly, there's no winning. It's more just what you are willing to accept when it comes to adaptations in that way. And you know, that's not to say that some people don't hit it out of the park. Of course, that happens all the time as well.
Yeah, I'm notably fussy on this point. I realized the first time I actually really noticed it wasn't with comics, it was with video games, and it was some video game that I really don't play video games as much as possible. I got a couple things on my mobile that like Snap and stuff that I'll play, but even that I really shouldn't do because I have no self-control. But so I don't play video games because I'm trying to be a writer, and it's hard to do both of those things at the same time. But one of the first times I noticed it was just like a real disconnect for me that other people didn't seem to have the same way, was a highly realistic Marvel game. And they had a Thor, and listen, it looked incredible. He looked incredible, but like, it wasn't Chris Hemsworth. It didn't look like Chris Hemsworth. It didn't sound like Chris Hemsworth. It wasn't my Thor. Like I've embraced that. It's locked in now, you know? So for good or ill, for me, once you've cast people in these things, if they've nailed it, it's locked in. So now that's what I need, you know? And it's tricky. And it's a little bit of a, I mean, fortunately for Marvel and DC and Disney and every big fucking company, not everyone feels the same way I do, or they'd be in trouble. But yeah, it's a real thing I have to like consciously get over. And sometimes I can't make the leap. So
that's tough. That's tough because it'd be Vincent D'Onofrio as Thor for me from the
Adventures in Babysitting.
The Adventures in Babysitting. That's the first time I saw Thor on.
Hey, him and
honestly, he was an amazing Thor. Like it was good.
Yeah. You're not used to seeing him with the gold locks, but yeah, that happened. You know, it did happen.
The funny thing is he also Kingpin in your head? Because double whammy is
well, you know,
Well, without
it
the
really
wig,
messes with me
it
because-
doesn't count.
Yeah. Put a wig on him, he's Thor again. So.
All right, that does bring us to the end of the speculation segment. And also, it kind of brings us towards the end of this episode. I mean, all we really have to do is sort of wrap this up. But Kelly, I want you to know this might actually be the longest, because everything that I'm going to say, everything we've talked about is absolute gold. As the individual who generally edits this thing, you know, I'm always like marking down notes on like, all right, we can cut that conversation. What Jesus said there wasn't important. We can cut that. But really, this was all gold. This may end up being the longest, most successful episode of Spectales ever. And so what I said at the beginning of the episode, I heard through the grapevine that this was going to be a great episode. It really didn't disappoint.
I mean, if we can beat the shit out of the numbers for episode 100, I'd be delighted. I'm just kidding.
I don't even know if we need to do episode 100.
Happy 100 anniversary.
Thank you very much. But truly,
well, I had a great time.
It was an absolute pleasure, Kelly. Thank you so much. Anytime we can, all your books. I mean, obviously, you've been on our poll lists already, but we are going to continue to put those on our list and help promote those books as well. But anytime we can do you a favor to repay you for the massive amount of time you've spent with us. We asked you for an hour, and somehow you've given us damn near 2. So thank you so much.
It's called not being able to shut up. It's a trade secret. I'm very good at it.
Jesus has the same problem, really.
Yeah. My beard
just invite me back when I have something cool to talk about something you guys are interested in. Invite me back. I'd love to come.
Always. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Awesome. I usually end by trying to, suggest people go out. You're very visible on all of your social medias, but something you've brought up that we haven't actually actually name dropped is the 1979 semifinalist Substack. Can you real briefly just pitch a Substack? Why would this be the best place for people to go follow you?
Well, honestly, the best reason is because it's hard with all the social media falling apart. So this is a place I'm going to be. And even if I choose to leave Substack at any point, I can just import that list and take you guys with me wherever we decide to go. And then you can unsubscribe if you don't like it there, or keep subscribing. So it's really the best way. It's something I've got more control over than Twitter and Blue Sky and Instagram and every other little thing that keeps becoming very difficult to keep track of people on. So it's a great way, if you want to keep track of me and what I'm doing, it's a great way to just stay in touch. There's a free newsletter. You don't have to pay any money. I would say that for most people, I don't post enough. If you're concerned that there will be too many newsletters, mostly I'm busy, and so there aren't too many. But it's a way to keep track of what I'm doing. We do some process posts. I've sometimes interviewed other collaborators of mine. If you're a paid subscriber, you can get access to new comics like Black Cloak and the Cull and some other things we've done. It's really great. It's really great. I think, especially in this age of social media sort of becoming very difficult and troublesome for a lot of us, it's a good way to make sure you're staying in touch with creators you care about or books you're interested in. And there's a lot of really great people also over there that you'll find if you follow me. Matt Rosenberg has an incredible Substack. Hickman, who we talked about here, has a really interesting one that he's pulled other people into too, incredible artists like Mike Del Mundo. And I think Chip Zdarsky has got one of the best Substacks I've ever read. That dude, I mean, can that dude not be funny? Like, I would like to challenge him. I'd like to be like, okay, every 1 hour that you're not funny, you can win $100. Like, I think he would lose. I think he would lose immediately. I think I would make out with all his money.
It's like a reverse swear jar
for him. Funniest.
Yeah.
He's one of the funniest human beings I've ever met. He's also terrific. So yeah, there's lots of good people over there. Ed Brisson doesn't have a paid one, but he's got a free one if you wanted to learn more about The Displaced. I'm sure he's going to have a lot of stuff about that on his Substack. Teenie Howard's over there, Torrin Grumbach, Jason Aaron, they've all got these great newsletters. So it's a very rich time if you're interested in creators and how they do their stuff. There's a lot of them talking about it and sharing their stuff. It's a great place. It's great. I mean, Substack itself has some problems, and we'll see what happens there. But there are great people doing great things on that mode of dissemination right now. So we'll see.
Well, I do appreciate the conversations you do bring to Substack, and noticing that there's, there are things that I'm not sure if they're. I don't think like what you posted in December on Substack, which was I can only imagine after having just read through the first 4 issues. I believe you put a panel from issue 5 of the Cull on here. And that was that was a fun, like, oh yeah, like I knew I was excited about it before, but this one page, right? It's the page of panels. It was a way to celebrate the holiday season, which was gret.
With horror. Yeah. I sent it to the right guy.
Yeah. It was right up our alley. So I do appreciate the conversation there, and you're totally right. Like, you don't inundate people with things, but the best part is for people who really want that kind of stuff. There are creators out there that are doing that, right? They're doing it daily.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say especially for people who like process stuff, Substack is a great way, because I've done a couple really cool posts, but I haven't done it regularly. But like, we've talked about DeLuca Effect on my page, and like I've put scripts up there. I mean, BKV, I can't believe I didn't mention Brian K. Vaughan. He's got a terrific Substack that they're doing a huge issue, or they're doing a huge book where they're doing like 2 pages a week kind of thing. But like, he also does stuff like he gave us all a pilot script to download if we wanted to look at that and stuff. So there's all kinds of cool stuff, a lot of it for free. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's like there's never been a better time to like try to learn about how to do this and figure it out. So
everybody go follow her Substack, 1979 semi-finalist. It is very well worth it. And of course, if you have not read any of Kelly's books that we've talked about here, we highly recommend them, from the superhero, from capes all the way to the horror and sci-fi. There's a lot of stuff. We even talked about, there's Star Wars, which we only briefly touched on that, which was shameful of us. So much good writing. Kelly, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on.
thank you so much, guys. Take care.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in this week. You know, we are going to be back next week as we continue season 3 of Spec Tales. And next week being the 100th episode, where Jesus and I keep telling each other it's going to be something special, but we haven't decided what it's going to be yet. So that'll be fun to decide. And we'll let you all know as soon as we figure it out, most likely next week. Until then, thanks again, everybody. Have a good week.